Okay. Okay, awesome. So we'll get started with the program today. I am going to keep an eye on the waiting room and the chat. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. This is an exciting event put on by the Black Women in Computational Biology Network, which I'm the founder of. My name is Janae, and I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm really happy that everyone is able to join us today. I'm sorry for the lag on my video, but hopefully everyone can hear me properly, right? Okay, cool. So yes, this is an event that is going to highlight some of the many pathways to careers in journal editing throughout science. Most of our audience is scientists from the computational field. But as the network is really kind of working towards global engagement of scientists at many different levels, we're really excited to also tie in some aspects of ways that we can promote diversity and inclusion at the science writing and editing level as well. So for those of you who may have never heard of the Black Women in Computational Biology Network, we are a global online networking platform for Black women to connect, collaborate, and communicate science across many different fields and backgrounds, and to really just feel connected to one another and just build global communities for conversation and connection. So basically, we really value lots of the collaborations that we have with many partners, including those from PLOS Computational Biology. And two of them are here today, Phelan and Jason. And they'll help us kind of continue and round out the discussion about more of the diversity efforts and kind of what we're doing in our partnership and how we're kind of working towards many of these goals as well. So this meeting is being recorded and it will be on either our website and or our YouTube page. If everyone could, if you're a general attendee, it's okay to keep your video off, and please make sure that you're muted. Throughout the program, you can follow along at this link, which I will put in the chat, that has the bios for our panelists today, and you can learn a little bit more about them there. Okay, awesome. So yeah, we will just get started. I'll also say that all of the views shared here today by our panelists are those of the panelists and not necessarily of the institutions that they represent. So please keep that in mind, but also we'd like to ask that you don't record or take pictures or anything right now. There's nothing really, any slides to share, but this will just stay within Black Women Comp Bios files and possibly will be put online. Yeah, so we will start with the panelists introducing themselves, their company, their current role, and I guess research background, and any appointments or leadership activities you have outside of your current company role. So we can start with Fernando, and you're first on my screen, and then we'll go Rita, Sherry, and Brooke.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. So my name is Fernando Chirigati, and I'm chief editor at a new Nature research journal called Nature Computational Science that will launch in January 2021, next year. And I just recently started working for Springer Nature. I started in mid-March, literally a few days before the lockdown in New York. So I haven't actually even worked from the office. I've been working entirely from home. So I don't know how it is to work from the office yet. And my main research background is in large-scale data analysis and scientific computations using diverse real-world examples. And I have a PhD from NYU, and I also did a 1.5-year postdoc at NYU as well. And yeah, I guess, Rita.
Let me see. Okay, sorry, I had trouble unmuting myself there. Hi, I'm Rita Strack. I'm a senior editor at Nature Methods. Nature Methods has been around for 15 years, and as you can guess from the title, we are interested in publishing innovative new methods for the life sciences. And so my background is in imaging, microscopy, and probes. As a graduate student, I worked on fluorescent proteins at the University of Chicago. After that, I worked on imaging fluorescent RNAs at Weill Cornell in Manhattan. And maybe I already said this, but I've been at the company almost 6 years. I don't have any external roles outside of this other than being very active on Twitter. So if that counts, then I'm good at that. And I think that's enough for now, but I just wanted to say quickly that I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to learning. I hope I have some good things to share with you, but also I want to hear how we can do better to diversify editorial.
Hi, I'm Sherry Rose. My primary appointment is as an associate professor at Stanford. So I'm the only one on the panel whose primary role is not journal editing. I'm also co-editor-in-chief of the journal Biostatistics, and I'm the first woman co-editor-in-chief at the journal in its 20-year history. So that was exciting last year when I started. I agree with Rita, there's a lot that we need to do. I'm looking forward to learning in this panel and sharing what we're doing at Biostatistics. My research background is in methodology for machine learning in prediction and causal inference applied to problems in health policy data science. I'm also co-director of the Health Policy Data Science Lab, which is at both Harvard and Stanford. And I wanted to highlight that the journal Biostatistics, even though computational biology is not my field, our journal publishes many impactful works in that space.
Right. Hi, my name is Brooke LaFlamme. I'm the chief editor of Communications Biology, which is a relatively new journal in the Nature research portfolio. My research background was a while ago, but I worked on Drosophila seminal fluid proteins. So looking at the interaction between male and female Drosophila and how these proteins mediate those interactions. I got my PhD at Cornell, and then I did a very short postdoc at Weill Cornell before starting as an editor at Nature Genetics. And in 2017, I became the launch editor for Communications Biology. I'm not sure if this counts as an appointment outside of my current company role, but I'm involved in our company's Toastmasters Club, and I founded it, and I'm currently one of the officers for the club. All right, so thank you, Janaea. I'm not sure if we lost
Okay,
anything.
can you hear me? Okay, cool. Thanks, guys, for that. I'm still figuring out my video, but thanks for the introduction. We can start off by just talking about your grad school and postdoc journeys. Did you know that you wanted to go into this field once you started grad school? And did you have the support from your mentors or your PIs in terms of navigating this path? And what other resources or tips can you share for people who are at this stage and kind of thinking about this path? We can start with Brooke.
Thanks. So no, I did not know that this was what I wanted to do. When I started grad school, I don't think I had any concept of what an editor was, or even that was like a job you could do. And through grad school, I think I was mostly familiar with academic editors who, like Sherry, are full-time researchers and also work as editors for journals. But it was in my postdoc that I realized, or at least finally admitted to myself, that I did not want to stay in research the rest of my life, had a mini existential crisis, and through a random series of events, learned about journal editing. I spoke to a few editors in New York City and realized that it was something that was a really good fit for me. And then I started, going in that direction to apply for those positions. My postdoc advisor and my PhD advisor were both extremely supportive. And I feel really lucky for that, because I know that that's not the case for everybody when they look to take a role outside of academia. But they both, were very happy to be references and to help me in any way that they could. So I think that that was really important for me also.
Awesome, thanks. Sherry and Rita and Fernando.
I'll keep my remarks brief because I am an academic editor. When you're a grad student or a postdoc, you're I would guess typically not thinking about becoming a journal editor at that stage, because that's usually not the first step when you're in academia. I believe we may have some questions on this later, but oftentimes when the path to an academic editor is you review for journals, you become a reviewer. If associate editors notice that you generate high quality reviews, you might be invited to become an associate editor. And then, having good performance or exceptional performance as an associate editor might put you in contention to become an academic co-editor. And so I will say with that pipeline, my PhD advisor was very supportive of helping me get reviewing experience, because not only is that an important thing to contribute to the academic endeavor, but because it was something that grad students don't otherwise get experience and guidance in, is how to actually shape reviews. So he did help me with that, and I was really thankful to have that guidance. And I would say, in my path to becoming a co-editor, I've had a lot of support from other mentors who were not my graduate advisor in bringing opportunities to me or putting me in positions where this was something that would become a possibility for me. And it was definitely not something that I knew that I wanted when I was a grad student or a postdoc. It's something that I did realize that I was good at. And I also realized you had a lot of potential to help shape the field and have an impact on the field, both in a scientific way. And then later when we talk about the ways that we need to expand diversity, I realized this is an area where I could have a huge impact doing that.
Hi again. So I was very much on the academic track when I was a trainee, so much so that when I was on the job market, I applied to probably 15 academic jobs. I was recruited to 2 universities, gave job talks, gave interviews. At the same time, I had a newborn baby, my son, and I guess maybe like Brooke's existential crisis, I had sort of a reckoning where suddenly work-life balance became important in a way that it never had been before. And this is not a ding on academia, but what I saw with my own eyes when I saw tenure-track faculty didn't align with what I wanted necessarily in my own future in terms of work-life balance. I'm an incredibly competitive person, and I knew that it would be hard for me to choose between my 2 families, my lab family that I was running and my home family. And so I would say I was open to jobs outside of academia because I sat with myself and realized that I could be happy doing something else. So I had every reason to believe that I could thrive as a PI, but I also knew I didn't have to do that to have fulfillment in my life. I would say that my advisors were not initially very supportive of this. They said, Rita, you have jobs, you have, offers. You could thrive in this very traditional path. We want you to, they didn't say explicitly they wanted me to do that, but they thought it'd be a waste if I didn't. But now 5 years in, 6 years in, I think they really see the role I've taken up in my community, the things I've been able to do for the community and for the journal, and they've all had a change of heart. So I wouldn't be too discouraged by that. And they did write me good letters, all of this. I think one thing that turned things around for me was actually during grad school, I saw Soumya Swaminathan, who Brooke must know, give a talk on being an editor at Nature Research Journals and what it means to, what the job is of being a professional editor. And it sort of planted a seed, and I hope if we can talk about that more today, I can plant the seed for you all about what a fulfilling job it can be, sort of tangential to academia. Okay, I think I've used too much time, so Fernando.
Yeah, I certainly did not know that this was actually a choice I could make. So my main major is in computer science, and I thought that editors were just like, like Cherry, like you're just an academic editor, like it's not a full-time position. So I certainly did not know that that was a possibility. And then, and I didn't necessarily want an academic career mainly because of the work-life balance. I would see like colleagues of mine like just working so hard to get that tenure position, and so hard to be successful with so much competition. I'm not necessarily like a competitive person, but I knew that if I wanted to succeed in that career, I would have to work even harder than I was already working. And for me, that was a little bit too much. And I know that people have different experiences. That was my experience. And then my current boss, the editorial director for the portfolio of applied science and chemistry and nature research, she was the one who sent me the job position for the chief editor at Nature Computational Science, because we were members of a reproducibility working group. And that's how I got to know her. And I thought that was, an extremely interesting job, and I always love to read papers, review papers, and kind of like have a higher level view of like all the research being done. And my advisors, they were supportive but not particularly happy about my choice. One, because they didn't want me to pursue a career in academia, and second, because they would say, computer science, you can make so much more money. Why are you going, for an editorial position, right? But I feel that it's more about your passion, what you want to do, than, anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. So thanks for sharing that. I guess also we can pause and take a second to think about what it is that you actually do. Like, what do journal editors do? And kind of thinking about those skill sets, how did that play into your transition into your first position? So like, how did you get your first position? And then like what are the skills that are kind of the most important in this role?
Well, I'm not sure who you wanted to go first.
Brooke can go, thanks.
But I can do it.
Yeah.
So like I said, I got my first editorial position at Nature Genetics, and I found out about that position actually through my informational interviews that I was doing. So just talking to editors who were in the area. And I always recommend this. It sounds like kind of cliche and like advice that you get from any job site, like do informational interviews, but they really, really are helpful. Not only because you get contacts, but you also find out from the source what the job is actually like. Because once you're hiring and you're in the interview, they're gonna make it sound better than it is. So I learned about it from an editor at Nature, and it was one of the two positions that I was interviewing for, and I realized that it was a really good fit for me. I think that skills I had that helped me to get that position, well, and right now I'm actually in the process of hiring people for my journal, so I'm thinking about this a lot, like what am I looking for when I'm hiring, is having the ability to really sort of synthesize information quickly and to say, just to get to the point of a manuscript, what's new here, why is this important, how does this differ from what's been done? And that comes through, critically evaluating manuscripts when you're in grad school and your postdoc as well. And I think also just having general good communication skills, written and speaking skills, is really, really important, because most of this job is, besides reading the papers, it's emailing authors, talking to authors and reviewers, and explaining to people why you've made a decision that you've made, because every decision we make is really impacting other people's lives, even though for us it's like, okay, I made 50 decisions today. You still have to be able to explain each and every one of them. I also look for people who are able to articulate why they want to be a journal editor. And this isn't exactly a skill, but it is really important. You know, there are many different motivations for it, that you really like to read broadly, you like to learn more research. But I try to get at, you know, how do they want to approach the editorial position? Do you want to, you know, be a gatekeeper, or are you interested in actually helping people to improve their work and to get their work published? And obviously I'm more focused on the latter. I also have academic editors on our editorial board, and we look for the same thing there. So I'm not sure I have like super awesome skills that make me better than anyone else, but that's kind of the general overview.
Maybe Sherry, do you want to share how you kind of evolved into your first position?
Oh, sure. So the process, as I mentioned before, usually you start by reviewing papers, and then you might be invited to become an associate editor. And then the process of becoming an academic co-editor-in-chief or editor-in-chief varies depending on the journals. Sometimes there's an application process, sometimes it's a nomination process. The process that I went through is that somebody nominated me. But other journals in, so my PhD is in biostatistics, so other journals in statistics, you can actually apply. And I think the things that set me apart as far as the skills that made me competitive for this type of position were a lot of the things that that Brooke mentioned. You know, being able to synthesize research and really drill down into what's important here, what's new here, being able to see the big picture is really important, and being thorough and thoughtful, because we're trained in really narrow area as a PhD student, and you really, in order to be an associate editor or co-editor, you really need to broaden. You need to have a big picture view of the field, and that's something that you usually gain over time. But it's difficult to advance to that level without building that somewhat quickly. And you build that, I mean, you know, I think part of the previous question was about, you know, what a typical day is like. I mean, I read a lot of papers and so as a statistics journal with an academic editor, our volume is much lower than some of the other journals probably represented here. So I usually get between 4 and 8 new manuscripts a week. And that's just new submissions. So that doesn't include revisions. And so that means I'm reading at least 4 to 8 papers in a variety of topics in statistics every week, plus revised versions of other manuscripts. And so for an academic editor, I would say, since it's not my primary job as far as my day-to-day, I usually spend at least, you know, probably a full day per week doing journal-related activities. The communication skills, writing those emails, thinking thoughtfully. Sometimes I read the reviews, and I take a few days to just think about the paper, because yes, you can make a ton of decisions in a week or in a day, but that paper somebody may have spent years on, and I want to do it justice.
Yeah, thank you. I think those are really awesome points, and kind of definitely lean into the next half of life as a journal editor. I think a few of you mentioned the work-life balance, and also kind of the way to progress through positions, and kind of like what the day of the life is like. But I think something that, at least for me, I'm curious about is what the professional currency is like for a journal editor. I mean, for us as PhD students, obviously we're told to publish, but like we publish to you guys. So how do you continue to advance and grow your skills? I think maybe Fernando, I know you're new into the position, so maybe you and Rita can discuss.
Yeah, I'm certainly new in the position, and maybe I'm still like figuring that out. But I feel that it's more about getting in touch, like the more you get in touch with the community and the more you help the community, I think you kind of grow in your role. And of course, right now I'm just like starting my job, and maybe I didn't mention that before, and I should probably, but like Nature Computational Science has a very broad scope because it is concerned with the novel developments or applications of computational techniques in many different areas, including biology, but also chemistry, includes applied math, physics, and so on. So here we have a really broad scope, different communities. And for me, like for instance, a challenge right now is just to get to know each of these communities and actually think about how can I have a good impact in these communities? How can I help these communities, with the research, because I feel that most of the job that we do here is not only about evaluating, papers and just accepting and rejecting, but actually like trying to improve, their research so that it's more visible, so that the potential impact of their work, is higher. So I think that the way you grow in this career is like by growing inside the community, by actually having a higher impact. And then as you become, more well-known, and as, then you can potentially, from editor, you can become eventually, a chief editor. And then, inside the company, you also have more directorial duties as well, and so on. But I guess like Rita can probably have more things to say about this since she has been in the company for so many years.
Actually, I agree perfectly with that. I was actually just jotting some notes on what I could say that's different from you. I'd say there are many tiers to being good at this job. And maybe I'll start at the smallest and get bigger. The first tier is just coming with the knowledge you have. I would say editorial is a job that uses all the training you've got as a PhD and postdoc. Critical thinking, how to design experiments, how to write papers, all of that just immediately relevant. But you will have to broaden your horizons, exactly as Sherry said, and you'll have to do that relatively quickly. That's part of the first year in the job, boom, you're just thrown in, you learn a ton about the areas you handle. But on the lowest tier, I'd say good editors are good at making every paper you publish the best version of itself. This is really, this really involves mentorship of the PIs, of the authors of the paper. Also, it involves wrangling the reviews, really thinking critically about what the ref said, and making clear decisions that you communicate to the authors about what needs to be done to meet the standards of your journal, to make that paper really compelling, really convincing. So that's a huge important part of our job, and I think arguably on the individual author level, the most important part of our job. Then as a good editor works very hard to grow their network and gain the trust of their community. When I came from outside of imaging and microscopy and literally fluorescent proteins, that tiny community, nobody knew who I was. I replaced Dan Ivanko, who was a very popular chief editor of Nature Methods, and people were like, where's Dan? For the first 2 years, where's Dan? How's Dan? And so I really had to work hard to build the trust of my authors, saying, when Rita reads my paper, she understands it, she understands where it fits in the community, and she's gonna make the right decision. So when she says yes or no for Nature Methods, I can trust that she did the right thing. That is a hard part of our job. It takes a long time. And I think 6 years in, I'm there. Maybe at the 4th year, I felt like I was really there. Then once you're in the community, you have to see what their needs are. What are the big trends? What do they need from you? What can you offer to the community? We curate a journal, that's our job. We build this thing. So how can we use it to serve the communities that read it and that publish with us? So I think those are, does that answer your question, Janaea?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think it leads perfectly into, I guess, just thinking about what goes into journal editing, what the field is like, laying the field of how actually it is so important in all of our fields. I know our audience today may be some computational, but there are a lot of people here from very different STEM backgrounds, and I think a lot of the connections can be made and to be seen of why journal editors are so important to our communities as we continue to communicate our science. And so I want to give the PLOS people a chance to introduce themselves in a second, but I think this also, creates the foundation for thinking about why diverse editorial boards are so important, right? So as a network, I think we've discussed a lot and acknowledged the important role that editors play as individuals who are at the forefront of science in our fields, deciding and working together to create the path for science that's worth paying attention to. And an important pillar of our mission as the Black Women in Computational Biology Network is increasing and creating opportunities for global engagement of Black scientists and all aspects of science, especially in the communication of it. For Black scientists who stay on the academic track, there seems to be a complete absence of Black writers and editors in some of STEM's favorite science journals. Movements like Black in STEM and everything that we see on Twitter and communication avenues on social media are bringing a greater awareness and visibility to Black scientists across fields around the world. And they're fiercely combating the notion that there are simply not enough, quote unquote, Black scientists to fulfill these roles. A few members of the network have also expressed, interest in the career path of being science editors, and our partnership with PLOS is one of the ways we're working together with them to both create opportunities on the scientific front, but also on the professional development front to give our members this opportunity to continue to advance on this front. So if Jason and Phelim, if you'd like to introduce yourselves and a little bit of your backgrounds.
Phelim, maybe I go first and
go ahead.
I'll do the brief introduction and you do the follow-up that we talked about. Janae, first, this is just awesome. So I just love this community here. This is just a real accomplishment. Just brief introduction to myself. My name is Jason Papin, professor at University of Virginia, co-editor-in-chief of PLOS Computational Biology for the last couple of years. And I've been with PLOS for probably a little over 10 years or so. That as part of my academic career, I've been helping and supporting that journal. There's a lot of things that Phelim and I and you and we've been talking about related to this topic, and Phelim's going to share that wisdom from that conversation. So.
It's nice to have an intro. Thanks, Jason. And thanks, Janae, for having us and for organizing all of this. So my name is Phelim McGowan. I'm an academic editor like Jason, like Sherry. So my position is I'm Associate Professor of Biomedical Engineering at Johns Hopkins University. But I've been involved in this academic editing side for about 10 years, sort of associate editor, deputy editor, and most recently co-editor-in-chief along with Jason. And so in doing that, I think this is no secret to say is that, academia, publishing both have a diversity problem. There's no doubt about it. And it's something that, as time goes on, we have a will to do something about it, but of course it's not the will to do it, it's the action that really matters. And as I'll get into a second, I think one of the reasons why Janae and everybody involved in the network, the efforts in putting together, an affinity group like this, why it's so wonderful is that it sort of makes possible that sort of two-directional conversation that might be difficult or harder to do otherwise. So it really facilitates efforts in trying to improve diversity on both the, in publishing, whether it's academic or professional publishing. So just to talk about, just briefly introduce a couple of things. Of course, Jason and I are happy to answer questions or talk more about the various efforts. But among the things that we've talked about, and we won't enumerate everything because Janae and her group have had so many fabulous ideas and we want to implement as many as we can, but just to highlight a few. And I want to, in doing this, I want to echo something that I heard Fernando say, and I think I heard other editors say, is, journals are not just a place for publishing papers, it's a community space. And so for us at PLOS Computational Biology, obviously that's very much the computational biology community. And so as such, as a sort of partly a public square in the computational biology community, really want to increase access to for different people to share their experiences to the community, right? That the journal is a community space and the community should be able to speak through it. And that means, you know, all members of the community. So being, you know, one of the things that we're actually trying to do is be more deliberate about, you know, seeking out diverse voices to contribute articles. In particular, say, for example, bring that in, you know, form of, for example, an emphasis on education, right? So a way to sort of reflect community experiences. Just recently, we actually, we had a paper submitted, reviewed, and now accepted. It's a 10 simple rules article on building an anti-racist lab. And in sort of bringing along that paper, we were obviously, you know, we were excited about the paper itself. But along with publishing that paper and being excited to share that paper, we hope that publishing that paper encourages other people to write about relevant topics, write about and submit articles, you know, in this kind of area that sort of can encourage people thinking about anti-racism and increases in diversity in the computational biology community. So certainly in sort of, you know, writing, that's one part. But, you know, we look at our editorial board and we know that the editorial board isn't as diverse as it should be. And so we've been making deliberate efforts to try and improve that. One of the things, and I'll come back to a point I just made, is one of the things about that is if you go to a currently not very diverse board and ask them for suggestions, you're maybe not talking to the right people. And so one of the things that's we really appreciate about working with the network is that's the conversation we need to be having. We need to be going and recruiting people not in the spaces that we have already, because that has not resulted in a diverse board. So we really appreciate that. And the third part is that, and something we're really excited about working with you all on as well, is providing pathways. So you've asked questions, Janae, about, you know, what, you know, the grad school pathway and what skills were needed. One of the things I think is it really has great potential is we want to be able to reach out to people at the more junior levels, senior grad students, postdocs, and give those trainees a chance to learn what publishing is like, whether on the academic side, you know, editing and reviewing and so on, or on the sort of the writing and editing on the professional side. And so, you know, both to develop skills, but also then to give them access to the community and sort of really develop in that way. So that's just a smattering. I'll stop talking. I'm Irish, so I sort of like keep talking if not stop. So, but yeah, just really appreciate the chance to sort of work with you all and open to any and all suggestions and questions.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that definitely sums up, I guess, where we're at in our collaboration and a lot of the hopes that we have in working with a group like PLOS. Do any of the panelists have anything to share about maybe what their journals are doing or what they would hope their immediate communities to be involved in moving forward?
I'd be happy to share some of the things that we've been doing at Biostatistics. So I started as a co-editor-in-chief in January of 2019. And so one of the first things we needed to do was invite new associate editors. And it was a huge priority to make sure to diversify the board. So I immediately, you know, ran the numbers to see where we were at with diversity. And it was very clear that we needed to do better. And so in our first round of invitations where everyone accepted, we were very excited about that. We invited 5 new associate editors and 3 of them were women of color, including 1 Black woman. And it was, I mean, and obviously, as has been previously discussed, if you start with a board that is not sufficiently diverse, it's difficult to diversify it overnight, but we do have to make really intentional and swift choices such that when we have board members who retire or resign, that we're not replacing them with people who have the same viewpoints and the same identities, in order to always be considering multiple elements of diversity with our board. Another thing that was just mentioned was, you know, who gets invited to speak and who gets invited to have opportunities. And that's something that I found particularly frustrating in a lot of high profile journals, is that the invited commentaries and perspective pieces are often by very well-connected, white men is very typical. And so when I became a journal co-editor, it was really important to me that when we organized anything that was invited, that it would be diverse along a lot of different dimensions. And I really wanted to prioritize career stage, gender, and racial diversity. And so when we organized in January, when I first started, we began organizing an invited commentary series on machine learning and causal inference, which is an area of specialty for me. I did not rely on just the people that I knew. I did a lot of reading of conference abstracts and archive papers to see who's new in the field. And I also specifically reached out to an author who would write something about disparities and race. And she wrote this incredible piece, Whitney Robinson, with her co-authors. She's at UNC. Teaching yourself about structural racism will improve your machine learning. And so it was really those things, we have to be intentional about these things. And that piece has been very widely read in the few months that it was published online in November. And so I think those are just a couple of the things. I think one other thing that I'd mention is that when we're in journals that are focused on methods, biostatistics focuses on methods that are driven by real world applications, but there's a lot of emphasis on the methods, that we need to think about how thoughtfully those applications are considered. So for example, when I get a paper that says race is a risk factor 10, 12, 20 times, that's not going to go over very well, because we know that that's incredibly problematic to say race itself is a risk factor. Rather than racism, we're focusing on the other issues. So these are just a few of the things that we're doing at Biostatistics to make sure that we're contributing to the community in ways that can advance these efforts.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I have some points that I can share later if anyone else wants to share. Yeah, Rita, or
I was...
Okay, go ahead, Fernando.
Okay. I was just going to mention that this is something that I've been thinking about since I started this job. And I think for me, it has been more on the outreach level, really, because, I mean, it's hard for me to control exactly the submissions that, the journal gets or who submits them. Like I can do my outreach, but it really depends whether, people actually submit it to the journal. But the things that we can control are usually the commissioned content, reviews, perspectives, comments like Cherry did say, and also in terms of hiring, right? So one of the things that I didn't do, so I had a comp bio position for my journal as an editor, and I should have probably paid more attention, like doing the right outreach, also to diversify, the pool of candidates, which, I didn't do, but this is something to keep in mind, for the future, because it's not only about who is writing for the journal, but also who is, behind the scenes, looking at our articles and also contributing to the community. Yeah. Sorry, Rita, you can go.
No, that was great. I was just going to jump into the void. So our journal a few months ago now participated in Shut Down STEM, which was where we basically took a day where we didn't do our normal work activities, but instead we brainstormed about things we could do to try to think about the Black Lives Matters movement, and just to diversify the journal. And obviously one day of thinking isn't enough to make a huge tsunami of change, but we actually, I think, came up with a few concrete ideas that we've been working towards. So Nature Methods is somewhat unique among the nature research journals in that we have a very large front half or magazine portion of the journal. Like Fernando just said, it's hard to have tight control over what comes in, but we have very tight control over who we commission stuff from and who we feature in our front half and that sort of thing. We've, for a very long time, been committed to gender diversity. 50-50, that's what we're shooting for. So even beyond representing fields. But we have not been as successful with geographical diversity or racial diversity. So that's something we're prioritizing now. And it's going to take time to bear it out in our pages, but it really is something we are doing. And then other things that we've tossed around, I'm not sure if if these are the best things to do, but maybe this is a good forum to just discuss. We think one thing to draw people in is just teaching them about what the job is. Many people said they didn't know what a professional editor was until they basically were on the job market. How can we remedy that? And how can we target underrepresented communities? So we thought, is it a good idea to specifically reach out to universities where a lot of the population is Hispanic or historically Black colleges and universities and say, hey, we want to come talk to your students, your graduate students, your undergrads. We want to teach you what this job is because we want more people in the pipeline. It's a great job. People don't know about it. So is that good? Is that a good use of our time? Is that outreach we should be doing? We can diversify our reviewer pool, but then there's also this pushback question of, if we're asking there's a small amount of women, there's a small amount of Black women. If we're asking them 100 times, are they overworked? Is that actually contributing to the problem? So these are the things that we don't know the right answer to, how to find that balance. About hiring, maybe Brooke can say more because she's hired a lot more people. I don't know what we know about a person's demographic information. Like, apart from what you could guess from their name, I have no idea if a person's a man or a woman. I have no idea where they're from. I mean, sometimes we can know where they're from if they need a visa, but I don't know what their racial identity is, ethnicity is, anything like that. We literally just go based on how they did their manuscript tests. So I think if we want to diversify who we're hiring, we have to know who our pool is. And so there's a gap there. Maybe Brooke knows more about that. One thing I've heard a lot about lately that I think is a great idea is this idea of cluster hiring, where you don't take a minority or an underrepresented person and just hire them as a singleton, where they're basically alone, but rather hire in groups, and that can give people a sense of community in their job and make them want to stay in their job, enjoy their job more. I really like that idea. A very anecdotal support of that is that we hired 2 Chinese editors for Nature Methods, and they're both in the Shanghai office, and they're really thriving together. And I think if either of them were just alone out there, it would be a much different dynamic on our team. And then, okay, that's it. That's all my notes.
Yeah, so I can say a little, I don't want to take up too much time because I know we're towards the end, but from the beginning, it was a really important thing for me to have diversity in our in-house editors. Until very recently, I was not doing so good on gender diversity because we were all women. But now we have one token male on our team. In terms of racial diversity, that is difficult, but I think, really I focus on the application, and I try to have as many people as possible at least get through that first round of screening. I'm very proud of the diversity on our team. We have someone from South Korea, from Puerto Rico. Until very recently, we had a woman from Lebanon until she got a better job. And we have a person from India, Sweden. I'm not sure that one counts though, but it is something that I do want to really emphasize the diversity on our team, and it is difficult to know where we should be looking to advertise these positions better. So I mean, some input from the community on that would be great. As for our editorial board, diversity is very important for us in terms of geography, gender, ethnicity, career stage, and the same for the reviewer pool. The way that we try to diversify a little bit more is that on the website for communications biology, you find Google Forms, both to apply to be an editorial board member or to be a reviewer for the journal. And that way, hopefully we're reaching out to people who actually want to review, who maybe we wouldn't have thought of on our own. So if you're interested in either of those, please go to our website. And yeah, I'll give it back to you, Janaea.
Thank you, everyone, for all of those really great points. I think I definitely have some notes that came out of some of the really important topics that you talked about, and I think they all point to why we are here as the Black Women in Computational Biology Network, but also like thinking about what it means to be a part of a network in the first place. So we talked about how oftentimes the people who are given a platform in a lot of these high-end journals or popular journals, they're people that are very well connected. They have that established network already. Whereas if you, again, also talking a little bit about what Rita talked about, like when you are the only minoritized individual in your environment, sometimes it's not just, you know, about being an extrovert and making friends, but sometimes you are, it almost feels deliberate that you're left out of these networks, either whether that's, you know, establishing a study group or a group of people to, you know, go over homework with, or, you know, less likely to get asked to present at said conference, or, you know, be able to take advantage of this opportunity. And I think that's why, we're here, for, you know, to provide a platform, and it's kind of like a one-stop shop for not just people outside the network to feel like they have an awesome opportunity of people to connect with, but, you know, why we focus on Black women, because it's often that really isolating feeling that we experience in a lot of our pathways. And then also, like, thinking about the pipeline and what is the pipeline. We talk about that, we use that terminology a lot, whether it's, you know, getting into a prestigious school or a specific program or specific area. And I think a lot of times the pipeline is focused on just applicants, and not necessarily the same amount of effort and resources put into thinking critically about the evaluation process, the retention process, and what it's like what is happening behind the scenes. I think as Fernando said, and a lot of the interworkings of who has the power and who has, you know, the potential to make the biggest impact and, you know, create and, I guess, change the framework of how that process is navigated. I think that's a big point that we have to think a lot about in terms of, you know, why isn't it just diversity and inclusion? And that's also a really broad term where, as Brooke mentioned, you know, you have people from lots of different places around the world, but diversity also sometimes is like one-sided to a lot of people. And the conversation is like, okay, are you offering these opportunities to low-income people as well, or also immigrants, or like what are the multifaceted aspects of diversity that we're thinking about? And I think we touched on a lot of this. Obviously, you know, the meeting today wasn't to solve the diversity issue in journal editing, but really to bring together, you know, this opportunity to start the conversation. And I hope that, you know, across Nature, across PLOS, across biostatistics, maybe we can continue to have these conversations, just, you know, as members of the broader scientific community. And I think definitely, you know, focusing on what it means to serve our community. This is one of the most pertinent aspects of being leaders and stewards of our science community. I think there are questions in the chat if we want to move to those in the interest of time in the last 5 minutes. Thank you, Christine, for being the last minute chat moderator. Okay, yeah, so the first one is from Shravya. Thank you, panelists and organizers, for this session. It's extremely helpful. I have a question about how editors give back to their research community. I want to request the speakers to perhaps give an example of how editors can help the scientific community grow and improve. Maybe one or two of you, whoever feels like going.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to chime in. You know, what I think journals and editors can do is help shape conversation in the community. So where there are needs in a community, where there are challenges, a journal can be a voice for that. And so in an effort to improve and grow a community, I mean, you think about grow and improve a community in all forms of that, to be better scientists, to be more engaged, to just do better quality work. There's all kinds of opportunities for that. just the most immediate example that comes to mind from our own journal is this recent initiative around reproducibility of models. And we've had this pilot program where we're specifically evaluating reproducibility of a model. And the hope is that what that does is to help improve and grow the community by engaging people to deal with a problem that everybody knows is there, but that can be really hard to deal with on an individual basis. And a journal can be a voice to help support tackling problems on a community level. So.
Rita, did you want to go?
Sure. So I think one thing, I think Jason's answer is perfect, but also another example I can think of is we enforce a lot of standards, actually. So one thing we did around 2 years ago, as you may know, cryo-electron microscopy has had this huge boom in structural biology where people are solving protein structures with microscopes rather than with diffraction. And unlike X-ray crystallography, where there are clear reporting standards, basically a table that every person fills out for every structure they solve, there was nothing similar for a cryo-EM structure. So it was really hard for readers to judge the quality of any given structure. And so what we did was we worked with people in the field and said, what do you want to see for every single paper that's published that's reporting one of these? And we came up with a table. And now we ask people to do that. And that's sort of just evolved into the field standard. So every time a person does a structure like that, they know they're going to have to report these things. And I think things like that can be very good for a community. And we have tons of examples of things like that.
Yeah, thank you. And Kayleen, I think your question was answered in the chat. I just wanted to do maybe one wrap-up question for, I guess, the most experienced and I guess, developing experienced panelists. What's your vision for the field of journal editing in 10 years? And what are some opportunities that you can offer to early career scientists or maybe grad students, postdocs to get involved now? So maybe Fernando and Brooke and Sherry, sure, whatever.
Sorry, I had an issue here trying to unmute myself. So the vision that I have, I think it's really, one of my passions in terms of like being a chief editor is one of the things that Jason mentioned, which is reproducibility, because I've been working with reproducibility for a long time during my grad school and postdoc. And I've attended like too many even like workshops on reproducibility, trying to, come up with standards. And, it's been like 7 years on that path and still we see some improvement, but not a lot. So I feel that my vision in 10 years is like really journal editing, like helping with reproducibility, making sure that we have the right standards, and not even standards, but also like platforms to help people make their research, reproducible, because that will really also increase the impact, of their research in the community. And in terms of, so that your second question was about, sorry, can you repeat again?
Opportunities that early career researchers can get involved in now.
Oh, sure. I think like we do, unfortunately this year has been big during the pandemic. We haven't been traveling a lot, but maybe doing like some virtual meetings and some virtual lab visits. But I think like the goal, at least like for me in terms of a new chief editor, is like to visit like labs and like really talk about the job and talk about like ways that you can, work on towards like this types of opportunity, I feel, yeah.
I'm not going to try and guess what journal editing or publishing is going to look like in 10 years. I've been here for 7 years. A lot of things have changed. A lot of things have not changed. And then there's preprints and the push to open access. But how can early career researchers get involved? Definitely, you want to get involved in reviewing papers as soon as you can, because that builds up your critical thinking skills and it also makes you more visible to the editorial community, as a person who, you know, thinks very deeply about the science around them. My editorial board is a little bit skewed towards more early career researchers, by which I mean like assistant professors and up to about tenure level. I mean, we have a few people who are more established professors, but it's more early career. And if you're interested, if you're an academic and you're interested in being on the editorial board, please do reach out. And I think that simply being willing to just reach out and ask people. I think that the biggest issue I see, the difference between more senior researchers and more junior researchers, is that the more senior researchers feel very comfortable calling up or emailing the chief editor to complain about things and to demand that we change our decision. And more junior people don't even know that you can do that. And so it is a little bit sometimes like an inside game, it feels like. And so I do try to emphasize that when I do lab visits or conferences or write about editing at all, that you should feel that it's your right to get an answer from your editor and to get an explanation for the decision. And just, you know, the worst that's going to happen is they don't reply to your email or something.
I can chime in just briefly to amplify the comments regarding standards. That's something that we advocate for at Biostatistics. We require people publish code with their papers, and that's becoming more and more the standard with a lot of journals focused on computational science. Where I'd like to see the field go in journal editing and in STEM is well-rounded, grounded science. So especially papers focused on methodology that you think really critically about how this algorithm or tool might be used. Does it cause harm? We need to really be thoughtful about those, especially as people are bringing these types of advances into, you know, machine learning in healthcare, algorithms in healthcare. And then as far as early career researchers, yes, please feel free to contact associate editors if you want to be a reviewer. If you're interested in being an associate editor, contact co-editors or editors-in-chief. It's okay to do that. And yes, I'll stop there.
All right, we do have to wrap up officially, but maybe if there are some lasting questions for a particular reviewer, you can ask them in person in the next maybe 5 minutes. But I really wanted to thank everyone for coming out today and being here and engaging with us in this really important discussion. I think if you want to learn a little bit more about the network itself, or if you are a Black woman out there who is in comp bio, you can learn more about us at blackwomencompbio.org. We are also accepting support for our upcoming Black in Comp Bio series, which is going to continue to highlight scientists within the field through seminars and workshops, and really just create a laid-back environment for people to engage with one another. Thank you everyone again for being here. This was really an exciting opportunity, and I'm just really grateful, so thanks.
Thank you for the invitation, and thanks for organizing this event. It was
Yes, thank you for organizing.
Thanks.
Yes, it was wonderful. And I did learn a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I'll be here if there's any other lasting questions.
And I also want to say, if people have questions later, feel free to, I'm sure that all of us would be happy to talk to you by email.
Yes, I put my email in the chat.
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. I think we're good then. Are there any other questions?
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.
Thanks again.